my name is Beck and welcome to another Booktubers React video, and this time I'm reacting to Regan'S videos. She's been on Booktube pretty much as long as I remember. She's one of the first channels that I ever started watching, so the fact that I get to make a video reacting to her favorites is kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start her video. Hopefully there are some in here that I end up discovering and adding to my TBR, because that's generally the goal of these kinds of videos, and I'm trying to see whether our tastes are fairly similar based on her favorites, because I know in the past we've had stuff that is quite similar, like Robin Hobb for example, but again with Robin Hobb and Brandon Sanderson, they're such popular authors that I feel like they've got a lot of overlap with a lot of fantasy fans. So if I'm taking her favorites as, oh, we both like Robin Hobb, so we're gonna like everything else, I don't know if that's necessarily true. So I want to look at her favorites and see if there are any kind of nuanced things on the list that I might like. But I know Regan likes her historical fiction and her literary fiction, and that's really not my thing. So hopefully there are some things in here that I could add to my TBR, but let's get started.
Hey guys, it's Regan and welcome back to another video. Today we are filming the big one, the video that takes literally a year in the making, and that is my favorite books of 2021. That's right, I've narrowed down, I want to say, the about 80 books I have read this year to my top 10. I would say in terms of my reading year, I had a lot of hits and a lot of okay read. That being said, the 10 books I'm going to be chatting about are all part of my all-time favorites at this point. They're either a new series or series I've caught up on, or just some fantastic standalones that just left a huge impact on me throughout this year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I'm going to talk about was actually one of the very first books I read in the year 2021, and when I finished it, I knew it was going to be in this video by the end of the year. It is just a story I constantly go back to and think about. I've made so many other people in my life pick up this book. Every aspect of the story, in my opinion, is just exceptional, and that is Pachinko by Minjin Lee. This is a historical fiction story that actually spans 4 generations of one proud immigrant family, and it opens in the year 1900, and we follow one of our primary main characters, Sunja, as she makes the decision to leave her home country, Korea, and move to Japan to raise her future family.
I knew it as soon as I started this video there were going to be historical fiction. But I've been to Japan twice and I just love Japan so much. So this has actually been on my radar before, but because it was historical fiction, I've not bothered to get it and add it to my list. But maybe I should, because even though it sounds like something outside of my wheelhouse, I think Convenience Store Woman was another one that I wanted to read, about a woman in Japan who worked at a convenience store. I think those two are ones that I might end up having to add to my TBR. But if you've read any of these that I talk about, let me know. And I've also got a bunch of GOODREADS links for all of the books that Regan talks about down below, because there is no way that I'm going to be able to give you a synopsis because I've not read them.
Speaking of fantasy, there were definitely a few series that took up a lot of my headspace and time throughout this year. None more than the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson.
Yes, Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, so obviously I've already read this, and I did a spoiler vlog for all of my reactions for Rhythm of War as well, and I'm very proud of that vlog because it's almost an hour long, so I really committed, but I love that book. So that is another point of crossover, Sanderson and Hobb.
Another series I have to talk about is, of course, by my favorite, Robin Hobb, and that is the Tawny Man Trilogy. Last year, I read the first 2 trilogies within Robin Hobb's world, and this year my goal was to read this particular trilogy, and I did. I completed it, and it was an emotional and traumatizing ride from beginning to end.
Robin Hobb is so emotionally taxing, but so endearing and worth it. Regan would probably say in her videos, but I haven't watched the rest of her discussion as of yet, they are very emotional, but they are worth your time. Robin Hobb does such brilliant character work that you just need to read her stuff. And unfortunately, I've only read the first book as a reread, and I've wanted to reread this entire series, but it's like 15 books in the Realm of the Elderlings universe, and it starts with the Farseer trilogy and then the Live Ship Traders, and then after that it goes on to the Tawny Man, I think, and then the Rain Wilds. So there's so much involved in each of these series, and I adore them so much that I want to dedicate the time to them. So I don't think I'm going to get to them this year, because I want to knock off a whole bunch of stuff on my TBR. Plus, obviously, I'm doing these videos as reactions and kind of challenges to myself, so I'm thinking 2023 is going to be the year of Hobb for me.
Next up, I actually have a fantasy standalone, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This book caught me a bit by surprise, which is kind of ironic because it is an incredibly hyped story. So many people have read this and loved this. Even still, I just was not prepared for the amount of world building, emotional stakes, and just plot the author was able to pack in to a single story.
I'm so excited because Emily Fox also had this on her favorites list, so maybe I can do a vlog combining both of them. And this will be the crossover point. This is really exciting to me because I've already got this on my TBR as an audiobook. I really struggled getting it physically, but maybe I can find it. I don't know. Either way, I'm definitely going to read it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to read it this year, maybe in June, July, but jury is still out on those reading plans because I keep making TBRs and they're not reading all of them and deviating based on my mood. But Sword of Kaigen, very excited about it.
The next book on my list might hit a little too close to home, but honestly was one of the most captivating books I read this year, and that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This book has stayed with me ever since I read it. It's just one of the most on-the-nose post-apocalyptic stories I truly have ever encountered, but could not recommend more. This is a story set in the near future in California after a climate crisis has basically thrown society upside down. Now, California and the United States is full of many different dangers, from pervasive water shortages to vagabonds roaming the street willing to do anything to live another day.
That sounds incredible. I didn't know that Octavia E. Butler had written a post-apocalyptic book, and I know that Emily Fox also had Octavia E. Butler on her favorites list. I'm pretty sure she did, or she's talked about Octavia E. Butler's work in different videos of hers that I've also watched, and maybe my memory is just combining them all. But I know that Octavia E. Butler has been read by Regan and also by Emily, so that makes me excited because of the booktubers that I watch, I feel like I have most crossover with both Regan and Emily. So this is making me excited for the inevitable vlog that I'm gonna do based on all of these favorites.
The next book was kind of a surprise for me this year. It was a new to me author, and just the series itself quickly found a place in my heart, and I just love it so very much. And that is the Sunlin Ascends series by Josiah Bancroft. This series just delighted me from page one. It is sort of a dark, whimsical adult fantasy story that in a lot of ways has what I love about middle grade, just obviously aged up for an adult audience. This is by no means a middle grade story. It does have that sort of whimsy that you often encounter in middle grade that I personally love, but this follows our main character Sunlin, and he has dreamed his entire life about visiting this very mythical Tower of Babel. In this fantasy world, this tower is huge, it's expansive, it's full of many different floors. Each floor kind of has its own structure, political system, and thousands upon thousands of people live within the tower and outside the tower itself.
This makes me both excited but equally nervous because I know that Regan goes into fantasy wanting a lot of political intrigue. And while political intrigue can be very rewarding, sometimes it puts me off. And so I'm looking at Sunlin Ascends and I'm hoping that it's not going to be a book that has really flowery prose, that is kind of literary, but also has a lot of political intrigue. I don't know, this is on the fence for me. It could really fall on either side, and I'm hoping that it will be one I enjoy. I've kind of been avoiding it for a while because I know that it's a series, and I've got a lot of series on my TBR that I'm either about to start this year or I've already started, so adding another one just makes me nervous, but maybe I'll just throw caution to the wind.
The next is an incredibly popular book. I almost feel like I'm one of the last people to pick this story up, but I finally did, and I loved it just like everyone else, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller.
I've already read that and I gave it 4 stars. Spectacular book, very emotional. I didn't cry like everyone else did, but it still definitely made me feel things. Annoyingly though, it's a standalone on her favorites list, so I feel like that would have saved me time if I hadn't read it. Oh well, at least I've got it done and I can just move on.
Next, I have a sci-fi option. I actually read quite a few sci-fi books. Well, quite a few more sci-fi books than I usually do this year, and I honestly really loved that experience, and I hope to continue reading sci-fi throughout 2022 as well. That being said, I would say my favorite sci-fi series I picked up was the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. I was actually able to read the first 2 books, Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War, and they were just so gripping and immersive and plot forward. I could not put them down.
I do agree, they were very immersive, gripping, and plot forward. I really enjoyed them too, although it took me a bit of pushing myself to get through them because they're just so, I don't want to describe a book as so wordy, but they were just very plot heavy, and that's a really good thing. But when you have a lot of political intrigue and multiple factions and your characters are here and everyone else is also got different perspectives, it could be a bit overwhelming, but I really enjoyed both of them, and I have the third one on my list. It was actually on the shelf behind me, and I do plan on reading this at some point in the second half of the year. As far as continuing the series goes, I'm not really sure when I'll continue, but I will get to this year. That is ultimately the goal. And then I've also started watching the first season of the TV show as well, which I was trying to put off because I didn't want to confuse the two and I didn't want to accidentally get spoiled through the TV show for the book series. So I'm being very tentative. So ultimately I would like to finish this as soon as possible so that I can keep watching the show because the show is really good too.
And the next book I'm going to talk about is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This was a book that was high on my TBR for 2021.
I read this and loved it. Joe Abercrombie is one of my favorite authors. His most recent series kind of ummed and ahed for me, but a lot of his work is pretty solid grimdark fantasy with very intricate character work, which I can of course get behind. I love my character work. So I'm excited for the new Joe Abercrombie release, but it doesn't come out until like 2025. So I'm going to be waiting a while. Maybe I need to do a reread or something. But I am committing to a reread of Hob next year, so when I get to that reread, I have no idea. Thankfully though, it is one less on my challenge to read for Regan'S list.
And the very last book I'm going to talk about is also the final book within one of my favorite trilogies of all time. It feels a little poetic to end it here, and that is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee.
That's great, but Jade City was just a 3 for me, so I didn't end up continuing. And this book was also on Daniel Green's favorites right at the very end of his video too. So I think I dodged a bullet with both because I didn't want to start a new series, and I'm thankful that I've already read Jade City, so I didn't have to worry about it. That is the end of this reactions video. Let me know down below if you have read any of these. I would be interested to find out, but thank you so much for watching this video. Come chat to me down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.